Tiffy time.
And that is all it's gonna be.
Toodles!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of For the Love of Wrestling. I am the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Thanking you for joining me here today. Greatly appreciate you. Greatly appreciate the response that I've gotten to yesterday's episode so far. Almost 180 views in 24 hours. I can't even begin to fathom the love and the response that I got to that. It's just mind-blowing to me. So thank you to each and every one of you guys that tuned in, that watched it either live or on demand. We are going to discuss today my NXT, the white and gold NXT product that aired last night on the USA Network. And it's going to be kind of fun to cover NXT. While, yes, I claim NXT, this is my NXT, as you'll always hear Noah Foster talking about how it's not his NXT. Nobody across the Jeff Meacham Network Multiverse of Media that does wrestling reviews covers NXT on a regular basis. So, as of today, there's now a channel, an affiliate, an association with the Multiverse of Media that covers NXT on a regular basis. Let's get into it and break down what happened. This was a pretty good card. Unfortunately, a lot of matches were added at the last moment, so I don't have a lot of images, but let's get going here and see what happened. So the show kicked off with, where did the image go? One second. Technical difficulties. Wouldn't be a show if we didn't have one, right? There we go. So the show kicked off with a 10-team bada bing, bada boom tag team battle royal, where the winning team would face Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo for the NXT tag team titles at Halloween Havoc. We had OTM out the mud in the match, Bronco Nima and Lucian Price, who've been getting a pretty heavy push here lately. The Creed brothers, Los Lotharios, Gallus boys, who are no longer on top, were in the match. Hank and Tank. We had Drew Gulak and Damon Camp, which I was a little bit interested that it wasn't Regal's son teaming with Gulak, but it is what it is. Briggs and Jensen, Malik Blade and Idris Inofe. Chase U, of course, was in there. So I didn't take extensive notes on this, but what I am going to do is I'm going to run through the order of elimination. So the first team out was Drew Gulak and Damon Kemp, followed by Hank and Tank, Briggs and Jensen, Malik Blade and Idris Inofe, Gallus, Out the Mud, the Brawling Brutes, the Creed brothers, and at this point, with 8 teams having been eliminated, it became a regular match, team versus team. Los Lotharios versus Chase U. And it was an awesome match. Great back and forth action. You had Thea Hale and JC Jane out there to support Chase U. And Chase U was able to get the W thanks to an assist from Brutus Creed and the Creed brothers, because we had a Royal Rumble 97-esque finish here where the Creeds had eliminated Los Lotharios, But because the refs were on the other side occupied, Los Lotharios got back in the ring, eliminated the Creed brothers over on the side where the refs were, so they got seen the elimination called. And as a result, we had the transfer there, making it Lotharios versus Chase U. Chase U again got the victory, so it will be Duke Hudson and Andre Chase with JC Jane and Thea Hale presumably in their corner next week on Halloween Havoc, taking on the D'Angelo family. And far be it from me to be Nostradamus here, but what I think is going to happen is I think next week is going to be the nail in the coffin of the Thea Hale turn. I think she's going to cost Chase U the match, possibly by throwing the towel in, much as Andre Chase did to her during her match against Tiffany Stratton. I think it would be a fun way for everything to come full circle, even though I much prefer the high energy, spunky Thea Hale as opposed to this, for lack of a better term, emo Thea Hale. Seeing JC Jane as a cheerleader, though, not on my bingo card for 2023, but I'm here for it. You know, when it came to Gigi and JC, I always said Gigi had the better body, but JC had the attitude. So seeing this different side of JC, seeing her in this cheerleader role, for lack of a better term again, I thought it was kind of fun, even though we all know it's going to be short-lived. Her being a member of Chase U isn't going to last because at the end of the day, Thea needs to break away to get that true superstar push. That's fair, Jeff. Gallus boys can't possibly be on top because mommy is always on top. So from there, we went to a backstage video vignette of Lexis Keene, the former Brian Pillman Jr. And he discusses, some of his father's history and just the venom and the vile in his voice when discussing his dad it's so chilling. I legit get goosebumps watching him cut his promos. And the main thing that we learned from this is that Lexis Keene will debut next week on Halloween Havoc, which is an interesting tidbit because I did a little bit of research here. And at the 1989 Halloween Havoc, the very first Halloween Havoc in history, Lex Luger defended his NWA United States Heavyweight Championship against Brian Pillman. So to see Lexis Keene, Brian Pillman Jr. debut at the Halloween Havoc event, an event that does have history as far as his father goes, going back to the inaugural event, definitely an interesting way to try to, weave this story arc in regards to him. From there, we got a promo segment. Carmelo Hayes came out to the ring and he starts talking about sharing a ring with Cena and Taker. And he says it's like playing universe mode on the video game. And then Baron Corbin comes out and interrupts him. Corbin calls Mello a fanboy for spending an hour in Shawn Michaels' office talking to John Cena, and how he probably has the fist image of him and Undertaker walking up the entrance ramp framed and on his wall at home. And at this point, Dijak intervenes. Because remember, it's supposed to be a triple threat in the main event this evening. Dijak comes out and he begins to go back and forth, with the other two. not really adding anything, but there was a snazzy one-liner where Dijak made a reference of, you look into my eyes and you can see the victor of the match or something to that effect. And Baron Corbin says, you're looking to what eyes? You're wearing sunglasses indoors. And I literally damn near did a spit take. Good thing my girlfriend wasn't asleep at that moment. She had come out to the living room. I think it was to adjust the thermostat, and she heard me laugh, and she just kind of looked at me, went back to what she was doing, and then went back to bed. But it was such a stupid but funny and catch you off guard kind of joke from Corbin that it legit made me LOL. Um, then Ilya Dragunov appears on the screen, and he says that the last thing that Cody Rhodes did last week before turning back over the roles of general manager of NXT is he turned tonight's triple threat into a fatal four-way. And the fourth man is going to be this man. And out comes Trick Williams. And everyone's like, oh, snap, because now Trick Mello Game are in the same match trying to become the number one contender for the main belt. And Corbin calls him on it, basically says to Mello, like, how do you feel about your boy stabbing you in the back? He's making moves without you. And Mello tries to downplay it a little bit, talking about, nah, we good. But you can feel the tension in the air. A brawl ends up ensuing. Trick Mello come out on top, sending Corbin and Dijak to the ring floor. And it was a good segment to kind of help propel the storyline towards the main event. Excuse me. We then go backstage and we find Fallon Henley, and she's in the locker room with some of the breakout tournament competitors. And she's trying to hype them up in a weird way because she's telling them all, not everybody in this room can win. Yeah, some of you are going to lose. Hell, 7 of you are going to lose because there can only be one winner. But losing isn't the worst thing. And she's like, look at me. I lost last year, but within a few months, I still had championship gold. Because if you remember, she and Kiana James became NXT Women's Tag Team Champions for a short span. So just kind of a little, if you get the L, if you get eliminated, don't let it go to your head. Don't let it mess with you. It will be okay. There will still be plenty of opportunities. We then go to our second match, and it's our first of 2 matches tonight for the breakout tournament as Carmen Petrovic takes on Jada Parker. And this was a fast-paced match, but you could definitely tell that both women still had a lot of work to do as far as their in-ring work. Their character development is doing really good. I had never really seen either of these women before. I might have seen Jada Parker once. Jada Parker, of course, is the one everybody swore that was going to be Jade Cargill's brand new name now that she was in the WWE, and slapped all the internet wrestling journalists right across the face. Couldn't have made me happier, for being honest. But both women there showed some great character development, but their in-ring execution was very sloppy. Still had a long ways to go there. Raymond, I'm not on that match yet. If you would like to dictate the conversation, super chat. Simple as that. Petrovich was very much being the one who was positioned to be the star in this match. And you could see the way they were pushing her. You could see in her video package, you could see in her entrance that she was the one that was being pushed in the tournament. And of course, she did get the victory with an innovative, but as of yet unnamed submission move. She basically took her leg and wrapped the crank part here in her leg around Jada Parker's neck and got her to tap that way. Little bit lower, probably would have been called a choke, but it was done well enough where it was a legal submission. We then go backstage and we see Tegan Knox prepping for her upcoming match against Lyra Valkyria. And Natalya shows up, and Tegan Knox is kind of surprised by this. And Natty basically says, she believes in Tegan. She sees something in Tegan, kind of reminds her of her when she was younger. She had her back against Piper Niven on Raw, so she's here to kind of show her support for Tegan tonight. We then go to the next match, and it is, in fact, Tegan Knox versus Lyra Valkyria. And this was a great women's match. Honestly, one of the best women's matches I've seen in a minute. Great chain wrestling, lots of holds and counters. Honestly, I don't think I have seen that good of chain wrestling out of women specifically, and I know that kind of sounds sexist, so forgive me here, but I haven't seen that good of chain wrestling out of women in a very long time. I highly recommend people go back and rewatch this match if you missed it. I know Jeff is in the chat room. As of yet, he hasn't seen NXT. He said he wanted to hear my review of it, see if it was worth, going back and watching. If nothing else, bro, go back and watch this, especially as big of a proprietor as you are of women's wrestling. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven show up randomly, and they distract Tegan. This allows Lyra Valkyria to get the victory off of the distraction, and then Natty and Tegan chase Piper and Chelsea back to the backstage area as the segment ends. I definitely feel this is setting up for a potential women's tag team championship match between Tegan and Natty versus Piper and Chelsea. Whether that happens on Raw, in Saudi Arabia, at Survivor Series, regardless, I definitely see a women's tag team match between those four women in the future. Lyra Valkyria then gets on the microphone and she says that nothing is going to come between her and her title match against Becky Lynch at Halloween Havoc. She says that she was on a quest to become the first Irish-born NXT Women's Champion. And then Becky did it a few weeks ago. And she crushed her dreams of being the first ever Irish-born NXT Women's Champion. And she says that now she has resolved and resigned herself that if she could not be the first, she will be the one who takes the strap from Becky. At this point, Becky Lynch appears on the Tron and she has a video message for Lyra Valkyria. Becky says that Lyra was the number one person that she wanted to work with when she came down to NXT. Not because the thought of a couple of Irish women kicking ass would be a great main event and would be history making, but because Lyra is that good. Becky starts talking a lot of personal stuff about how, you start trying to challenge me for this belt. You start trying to call me out, and now you're trying to take the way I make my money from me. You're trying to take food off my table, food out of my daughter's mouth. And you need to stop looking at this as I'm getting in the ring with my hero. When you step into that ring with me next week, you need to despise me, because that's the only way you will have a chance at defeating me. And as she closes out her video promo, she welcomes Lyra to the big time. Great intense match and segment between all women involved. Again, Lyra and Tegan, fantastic match. Natty being at ringside, love Natty, can't get enough of her. Piper and Chelsea's interference made perfect sense based off of what happened the prior evening on Raw. And then the Becky Lyra post-match promos, just chef's kiss. This is women's wrestling. Whoever is booking the main roster needs to take note of this shit, because when NXT has the better women's division out of Raw and SmackDown, there's problems. I'm just saying. Things have gotten better the last couple weeks. We've been seeing a lot more women featured on TV, especially on Raw. But NXT still has the better defined women's division. And it's a damn shame for a company that's been around 60 years. But I digress. Next up, we've got a backstage segment with Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes. Trick Mello game back on top on our televisions. And Mello says that Trick kind of blindsided him out there today. And Trick says that, Mello brings up the fact that last week they kind of made a deal where they were going to focus on getting Trick back his North American title and Mello back his world title. And Trick says, you said that. I didn't agree to that. So definitely an interesting dichotomy there. Interesting way that they're trying to set up the potential of a heel turn. Going to be interesting to see how that develops. We'll probably get more of that at Halloween Havoc, to be sure. If there's going to be a heel turn, I definitely think that's where it's going to happen. Trick then tells Mello that, where I'm at right now is the same place that you were at last year. He's got that fire. He's got that hunger. At this point last year, I think Mello was or just had lost the North American title on his trek towards being NXT champion. And Trick is he's got that eye of the tiger, man. The crowd is totally into him, just like they were to Mello at that point. Mello says that if Trick wanted to do this, should have came up, talked to him. They could have formulated a plan, come up with a game plan. Now Mello has to do what Mello does, and that's take out anybody that's in his way. Trick says that he's got the same energy right now. So no matter what happens, though, it's still going to be Trick Mello game. We then go to another backstage segment. And Gigi Dolan is kind of walking around backstage. And Blair Davenport had issued a challenge previously to Gigi, and Gigi's kind of commenting on the whole challenge and everything, and she stumbles upon a tarp over a wheel, and she pulls the tarp off, and it's the spin a wheel, make a deal that NXT Halloween Havoc is known for. So she spins the wheel, and it ends up coming up on a lights out match. Gigi accepts the challenge. So next week at Halloween Havoc, it'll be Gigi Dolan versus Blair Davenport in a lights out match. I kind of agree with you, Jeff. I kind of agree. I think that if it's going to happen, it will be Trick Williams. And I agree with Josh. I think it's going to be that Triple H HBK 2002 storyline, but we'll get to that in a little bit there, Josh. Don't jump the gun. I haven't got to that segment yet. We then see highlights of Braun Breaker's attack on Von Wagner from about a month ago. Von is trying to go through some physical therapy, trying to stretch out the weight band, and he just can't do it. His buddy Stone is there back at the therapy center with him. He's trying to tell him to focus. You can do this. I believe in you. Trying to get him hyped up. And it ends with him picking the band back up and moving it just a little bit, whereas before he could barely even pull on it. Not a whole lot of movement. It's not like he started flexing, but you could see that they're trying to build the storyline and develop it a little bit more. Next match, another women's match. Kiana James versus Shotzi. This is out of the repercussions from last week. This was a decent match, you know. I wasn't as impressed by this one as I was between the one Tegan Knox and Lyra Valkyria. Mostly dominated by Shotzi Blackheart. Definitely had to get her comeuppance on Kiana for the actions of last week. Kiana did gain some control of the match during the commercial break, but once they came back from the commercial break, Shotzi pretty much got control of the match back, and it became a game of one-upsmanship. Roxanne Perez then came out in order to get some revenge on Kiana, again from last week, because last week it was Roxy versus Kiana. And then Shotzi pulls an Eddie Guerrero. You know, Roxy takes Kiana's bag, finds a brick in it, gives it to Shotzi while the ref is distracted. Kiana turns around, Shotzi throws the bag at Kiana, drops, and does the whole, oh, she just hit me. Referee turns around, catches Kiana with the smoking gun. Doesn't call for the disqualification, but it's enough of a distraction where we're able to get Shotzi the pinfall victory over Kiana James. We go backstage and we then see Oro Mensah and Lash Legend, and they're on the phone with Noam Dar because he is at the hospital with Jakara Jackson. It was announced on social media earlier in the day. Jakara Jackson not cleared to compete in the breakout tournament, so her spot's being replaced. So this was the furthering of that story that got leaked out on social media. Mackenzie is backstage with Lash and Oro Mensah, and just it's a goofy segment with a stable that I really don't care about, if I'm being completely honest. The Meta 4 stable just can't get behind. It's I'm not impressed with Noam Dar. I haven't been a fan of Lash Legends since I started watching. The only ones that I can even slightly get behind are Jakara Jackson and Oro Mensah, and neither one have done anything on their own for me to really want to invest my time and my energies into them. So this whole stable of theirs is just hot garbage to me. We then get drawn away from this segment because Mackenzie hears that something's going on backstage. And we find Trick Williams has been laid out in the backstage area. Mello shows up on the scene, wants to know who attacked him, but nobody knows. And this is what Josh was alluding to a little bit ago in the chat room, talking about that 2002 Triple H HBK storyline. You know, best friends, Triple H attacked HBK, started that feud that led to that unsanctioned match at SummerSlam. It's got all the writings on the wall when you figure that HBK has definitely dipped into his past in the NXT before to further storylines. You think about JC and Gigi and the barbershop window callback when they officially broke up. You think about Roxanne Perez collapsing in the ring like Shawn Michaels did at the house show. And now here's this. And those are just the ones that come to my head. There may have been others that I'm forgetting, but there's 3 pretty big callbacks to HBK storylines here. So I definitely think that it might end up being Mello that attacked Trick here. We'll have to see how things go. We then get Kelly Kincaid outside the arena there as we come back from commercial, saying that Trick Williams is en route to the local hospital, and the main event, is now back to being a triple threat instead of a fatal 4-way as it was originally intended. Kelly throws it back to Mackenzie, who finds Dominic Mysterio backstage, kind of milling around the locker room, some of the other talent. You see Axiom back there, a few other people. And she begins to interview Dirty Dom, and Nathan Frazier attacks him once again. This is a continuation of what happened off air after Raw the previous night, where there was a backstage brawl between these two. I definitely see probably night 2 Halloween Havoc. We're probably going to get Nathan Frazier versus Dirty Dom Mysterio. Don't think they're going to do it on Raw next week. Not when we've got 2 nights of Halloween Havoc coming up in the next couple weeks. Definitely think this will be a Halloween Havoc match, though. Night 1 is already stacked. I'll talk about that towards the end. But yeah, I definitely think this will probably come to fruition night 2 of Halloween Havoc. We then have Mommy come in, makes the save, because this brawl between the two just goes down to the ring, out of the backstage area into the ring. Mommy comes out, makes the save and everything, but yeah. Next, we see Roxanne Perez and Shotzi walking through the backstage area, and Shotzi mentions how the Roxanne Perez that she's seen here over the last couple weeks isn't the same Roxy that she teamed with last year on SmackDown. This one's just a little bit more ballsy, and she likes that. They come upon the spin the wheel, make a deal once again, now that it's been uncovered by Gigi Dolan. And since Shotzi is the host of Halloween Havoc for both weeks, Roxanne asks if she can take a spin at it. Spins the wheel, and next week it's going to be a Devil's Playground match between Roxy and Kiana. Next match, it's Brinley Reese. This is who took Jakara Jackson's spot, versus Ariana Grace, who, as some of you may know, some of you may not know, the daughter of one Santino Marella. This is the second match of the evening for the women's breakout tournament. So if you're counting at home, out of the 6 matches for the evening, because this is the 5th match I've talked about, still have the main event. That's 4 women's matches on a 2-hour card. Other television bookers, let's take note of this. Instead of having one match at the 6:20, 6:30 time slot every week, 4 women's matches. Take notes, especially if you want Northern California journalists to make you the Booker of the Year. I know, these matches don't have 37 super kicks, 25 false finishes, and a couple of, long-haired boys from Rancho Cucamonga in them. Just saying. Brinley Reese, though, versus Ariana Grace. And despite the fire in Reese, Grace was definitely the star of the match once again. You could tell she was the one being set up for the push here. Simple match, nothing fancy. Ariana Grace won with another innovative finisher, not a submission like we saw in the first breakout match. Not sure what she calls it because we haven't really seen that much of Ariana Grace before, but it was a cool finishing maneuver. I'll be curious to see what she calls it. So Ariana Grace moves on to the semifinals. Again, we'll get to that a little bit later on. We then go backstage, and Mackenzie is just talking with Braun Breaker, and she attempts to discuss how historic last week was. And Braun cuts her off before she can start talking about, the Cody Rhodes, the John Cenas, the Undertakers, the blah, blah, blahs. And Braun says that it was historic because of Braun Breaker. Mr. Stone Von Wagner's associate comes, interrupts him, just starts getting heated, like this aggression just coming out of him. And he ends up challenging Braun to a match at Halloween Havoc. Braun accepts. I'm assuming this is going to be a night 2 match because when they did the rundown at the end of the night, they did not announce this one for next week. So we're just going to have to wait and see how things progress from here. We then go to our main event, and it is the triple threat match. Dijak, Baron Corbin, and Carmelo Hayes. Number 1 contendership to Ilya Dragunov's NXT Championship at night 2 of Halloween Havoc. This was just a brutal knockdown smash mouth main event. Dijak and Corbin definitely dominated. They had the height, they had the power, they had the experience from both having been on the main roster, while Melo is still, for lack of a better term, still a rookie, as he hasn't had that main roster experience yet. Melo played from behind the 8 ball a good chunk of the evening and the match, but he didn't let it deter him. He didn't let it hinder him. Don't hinder the gender. When Corbin laid out Dijak with the end of days, Melo hit the nothing but net from the top rope, dropping Corbin. He then crawled on top of Dijak, got the pinfall. 1, 2, 3. The winner of the match and the number 1 contender to Ilya Dragunov's championship, Carmelo Hayes, which means we will get the conclusion of the trilogy on night 2 at Halloween Havoc. We then go backstage as we begin to end our show for the evening, and Lyra Valkyria is in the locker room. On her locker is a picture of her and Becky taped up on it. She takes the picture down and kind of is talking to the picture how come next week I'm going to take your championship. And she tears the picture of her and Becky in half and begins to walk away. As she walks away, an image comes up on the television screen and is that bitch, Jade Cargill, who just taps her watch. Almost alluding to the fact that it's almost time for me to debut. We've seen her now on Fastlane. We've seen her on 2 NXTs. We've seen her on a SmackDown. We've seen her on a Raw. We still don't know officially where she will end up, but her popping up on the screen, tapping her watch like it's time, it's almost time, leads me to believe that we will be seeing her sooner rather than later. While I definitely think a Royal Rumble debut is definitely not happening now, I definitely feel like they're starting to push for her to come sooner. I don't know if I want her to debut with everything going on leading up to Saudi. I feel like there's too much chaos. We've got 2 weeks of Halloween Havoc that we already need to worry about and pushing and building. We've got the build to Saudi that is still formulating everything, including a 5 women's championship match, Fatal 5-Way for Mommy's title. I almost would say hold off and debut Jade and have her be a 6th in that match. Where she can lose the match without getting pinned and make a huge moment and impact at this show that wouldn't have been possible under Tony Khan's watch, if we're being real. So that was the show for this week. Coming out of that, we have for next week on Halloween Havoc, it'll be the NXT Tag Team Championships on the line as Tony D'Angelo and Channing Stacks Lorenzo defend the belts against Chase U. Roxanne Perez versus Kiana James in a spin the wheel, make a deal, Devil's Playground match. Lexis Keene, the former Brian Pillman Jr., will make his in-ring debut. In another spin the wheel, make the deal match, we have a lights out match between Gigi Dolan and Blair Davenport. Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria, more than likely our main event match for the NXT Women's Championship. We have 2 Women's Breakout Tournament semifinals matches as Carmen Petrovic takes on Lola Vice and Kehlani Jordan takes on Ariana Grace. And then the only match we know about so far for week 2 is Carmelo Hayes versus Ilya Dragunov and Stone versus Braun Breaker. So lots of stuff going on my NXT coming up in the next couple of weeks. As Josh alluded to, we have 5 women's matches next week on NXT Night 1 of Halloween Havoc. 5. Should be an amazing show. It will be a watch-along event across the Jeff Meacham Network multiverse of media, as Noah Foster and myself will be calling both nights of action. So make sure you tune in 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday, as me and Noah kind of give a little bit of a pre-show before the show to kind of go over the matches a little bit more in detail and hype everything up. I think a lot of people are sleeping on my NXT right now, and every week it just seems to get better and better. It's definitely firing on all cylinders. Next to Impact, it is the second best women's division in professional wrestling right now by a main roster company, a main company. And by those, I'm discussing NXT, AEW, Impact, Raw, SmackDown. I am separating Raw and SmackDown as their own, even though they're all under the WWE umbrella, because they're booked completely differently, and it shows. It completely shows. I would say right now it goes Impact, NXT, and then Raw, AEW, SmackDown. Strike that. SmackDown, AEW, Raw. Because the Raw Women's Champion hasn't really had a title match in a while. Whereas Io Sky at least is out there on a regular basis doing her thing. Let's see what's going on here. Jeff says, so based on everything you laid out, I still say Trick set it up to look like Melo dropped him and he'll cost Melo at night 2, but it won't come out that it was a setup till later. That's possible. That's possible. Well, if there's no other comments, no super chats or anything, we're going to go ahead and begin to wrap it up here. Again, I want to thank everybody for the amazing response to the first episode that went yesterday. Already almost 180 views on it. Just outstanding. I can't believe the fact that the first show got that kind of response. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow when I will be doing my AEW Dynamite review. Generic graphic, because I usually wait until the night of after the show is over to pull a still to use. But make sure you tune in tomorrow morning, same bad time, same bad channel, when I discuss Dynamite. Other than that, I will see you guys then. Thank you all for tuning in and turning up. I greatly appreciate it. And I will see y'all tomorrow.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.
Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you.